The deck of the Intrepid shuddered as another blast from the Krullan vessels struck their already compromised shields. Captain Rice steadied herself against the command console, ignoring the trickle of blood from her temple. "Shields at 26%, announced Lieutenant Park, her voice unnervingly calm. "One more direct hit to our starboard section will breach the hull." In the adjacent science bay, civilian researchers huddled beneath workstations. Dr. Ellis Chen, the quantum physicist who'd helped design the experimental FTL drive, frantically worked his console, muttering calculations under his breath. "Captain," he called, voice cracking. "The quantum feedback from their weapons is creating an unusual resonance pattern in our drive matrix. I've never seen anything like it." Ray's had no time for scientific curiosities. "Unless it helps us survive the next 5 minutes, it can wait." The view screen flickered, revealing the lead Krullan vessel. Its predatory profile resembled a manta ray forged from obsidian, energy crackling along serrated edges. The alien commander appeared, reptilian features arranged in what humans might interpret as a sneer, scales gleaming like oil-slicked metal under harsh lighting. "Your primitive vessel dares interfere with Imperial justice," the translator rendered in a flat, mechanical tone. "These refugees harbor terrorists and information thieves. Your intervention constitutes an act of war against the Krullan Imperium." Ray straightened her uniform. "We're a scientific vessel from Earth, a planet unknown to you. We have no stake in your conflict. Allow us to depart with the survivors." "And Earth location data noted," interrupted the Krullan. "Your technological signature matches Confederation auxiliary design patterns. Deception tactics confirm hostile intent." Before Rice could respond, the communication cut. The tactical display blossomed with new threat indicators as the Krullans launched boarding craft. "Marines to breach points," Rice ordered. "Security teams, arm the science personnel." Security Chief Matsuda distributed pulse rifles to the reluctant scientists. "Standard protocol is defensive positions only," he reminded them. "These weapons are set to stun." Dr. Aisha Khan, the xenobiologist, awkwardly held her weapon. "I've only used these in simulations. Today's a great day for field experience," Matsuda replied grimly. Meanwhile, Rodriguez at Communications had established a tenuous link with the refugee vessel. On a secondary screen, an alien face appeared, humanoid but with iridescent skin that shifted colors with each emotion. "I am Turinal, diplomatic envoy of the Galactic Confederation," the alien spoke, voice melodic despite the obvious strain. "You must not engage the Krullans. Their neural-linked battle networks make them virtually unbeatable in direct combat. Flee while you can." Reyes glanced at the tactical display. "That's not an option, Ambassador. Our FTL drive is compromised." The ship rocked violently as magnetic grapples attached to the hull. Breach alarms wailed. "They're cutting through Deck C," shouted Matsuda through the comm. Dr. Chen suddenly looked up from his console, eyes wide. "Captain, our damaged FTL resonance pattern. It's creating quantum interference with their neural network. If we invert the drive polarity and channel it through our deflectors." "In English, Doctor." "We can temporarily disrupt their hive mind tactics. They'll be fighting as individuals, not a coordinated unit." Rice didn't hesitate. "Do it." As the first Krullan boarding party breached the hull, Chen's fingers flew across his console. The lights dimmed as power diverted to his improvised weapon. Throughout the ship, the invading Krullan suddenly stumbled, their movements becoming erratic as their neural connection faltered. "All hands," Rise announced shipwide. "The enemy is vulnerable. Defend your stations." She turned to tactical. "And target their primary vessel with everything we've got left." The battle for the Intrepid had only just begun. The aftermath of their desperate gambit left the Intrepid in eerie silence. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across the bridge as damage reports flooded in from all sections. The modified gravity wave detector had worked better than anyone expected, perhaps too well. Where 3 Krullan warships had surrounded them, now only floating debris remained of one, while the other two drifted powerless, their sleek hulls cracked open like obsidian eggs. 14 casualties, 8 critical, reported Dr. Padel from medical. And sir, you need to see this. Captain Rice made her way to the medical bay, passing repair crews and the acrid smell of electrical fires. The wounded had been arranged in the main treatment area, but Dr. Patel led her to a secure isolation room. Inside, strapped to a bed, lay a Krellin. Unlike the imposing figure they'd seen on the view screen, the alien looked vulnerable. Its metallic scales had dulled, and a breathing apparatus covered part of its face. Sophisticated restraints monitored its vital signs. Their biology is fascinating, Dr. Patel whispered. Triple redundant neural pathways, distributed organ systems. They're designed for warfare at the cellular level. Designed. Rice raised an eyebrow. That's my preliminary assessment. These aren't natural evolutionary adaptations. Before Rice could inquire further, a commotion from the corridor interrupted them. Ambassador Tyrannel had arrived with the rescued refugees, his iridescent skin shifting through shades of blue and gold as he surveyed the medical bay. Impossible, he murmured, moving closer to the restrained Krellin. No Confederation vessel has ever captured a Krellin officer alive. Their neural implants trigger cellular breakdown upon capture. Perhaps our FTL disruption affected that system too, suggested Dr. Chen, who had joined them. We didn't just break their communication network, we severed their connection to their central command. Tyrannel's skin rippled with what might have been excitement. This changes everything. The information this specimen possesses could save countless lives. This specimen is my prisoner, Rice stated firmly, and will be treated according to our protocols for prisoners of war. The ambassador's colors darkened slightly. You don't understand what you're dealing with, Captain. The Krellins have destroyed 18 civilizations in the past 30 years. A sudden alarm cut him off. Lieutenant Rodriguez burst into the medical bay. Captain, we've got problems. The remaining Krellin vessels are powering up some kind of emergency systems, and we're detecting a quantum entanglement signal. They're calling for reinforcements. How much time do we have? Based on their subspace distortion patterns, maybe 3 hours before their fleet arrives. Tyrannel's skin blanched to pale white. We need to leave immediately. I can direct you to a secure Confederation outpost in the Cygnus Reach. It's our only chance. Rice turned to her chief engineer. Commander Okafor, can we move? The engineer wiped grease from her hands. Conventional drives are operational at 60%, but the FTL core is completely fused. We're not jumping anywhere. The refugee vessel has a functional slip drive, Tyrannel offered, not as advanced as your technology, but reliable. We could tow your vessel if we establish a gravimetric link. Rice considered their options. The stars in this region were unfamiliar, Earth was unreachable, and a Krellin fleet was inbound. Worse, they had an enemy commander in their medical bay who could wake at any moment. Rodriguez, start transferring all sensor data on the Krellin ships to secure storage. Okafor, work with the refugees to establish that gravimetric link. She turned to Dr. Patel. And keep our guests sedated until we reach safety. As the crew scrambled to their assignments, Rice studied the star chart Tyrannel had provided. The Confederation outpost was hidden in an asteroid field around a neutron star, defensible, but also a potential trap. One more thing, she announced. Prepare the captured Krellin vessels for remote detonation. If we're being followed, I want to leave our pursuers a surprise. The Confederation outpost's internal architecture defied human expectations. Instead of the military precision Captain Rice anticipated, the sprawling complex resembled a living organism, with corridors that shifted configuration every few hours and biometric interfaces that responded differently to each species. The station's outer shell is magnetized asteroid material, explained Tyrannel, as he guided the intrepid senior staff through a security checkpoint. But the internal structure is composed of programmable matter cultivated from the Iridian Nebula. It adapts to threats automatically. Commander Okafor ran her hand along a pulsating wall. Incredible. It's like the entire station is thinking. In a manner of speaking, it is, replied Admiral Zextral, who had finally agreed to meet them after 3 days of quarantine. The Admiral belonged to a species Reyes hadn't encountered before, tall, with 4 arms and skin that appeared partially translucent, revealing complex circulatory systems beneath. The station shares patterns with our consciousness, but lacks true sentience. The security measure, you understand. The Admiral led them into a vast chamber where representatives from 12 species sat in tiered seating. Holographic displays showed star systems, fleet movements, and what appeared to be casualty statistics. This is the War Council, Tyrnell whispered. They rarely convene in person. Your arrival has caused quite the stir. Lieutenant Rodriguez nudged Dr. Khan, pointing to the massive communication array at the center of the room. That signal modulation looks familiar, she murmured, but it's using frequencies I've never seen before. Before Khan could respond, an alarm shrieked. The holographic displays flashed red, and the entire chamber erupted in chaos. Security breach in Medical Section 5, announced an automated voice. Containment failure. Hostile entity detected. Admiral Zextrol's translucent skin darkened with what might have been anger or fear. The Krellin prisoner. Your sedation protocols failed. Rice tapped her communicator. Security team. Report. Static answered her. The station's internal communications have been scrambled. This is impossible, insisted one of the council members, a being composed of what looked like crystalline fibers. Our containment fields are generated by thought-locked algorithms. No Krellin could bypass them. Dr. Khan stepped forward. Unless they've evolved. The prisoner's neural architecture showed signs of adaptive pathways unlike anything in your medical database. The chamber's lights flickered, then stabilized. On the main holographic display, a new image appeared, security footage of the escaped Krellin commander, Sarkvex, accessing a communication terminal. He's transmitting, Rodriguez realized, studying the data patterns. But not to the Krellin fleet. He's broadcasting to something inside the station. A second alarm sounded, this one deeper and more urgent. The Admiral's 4 hands worked separate control panels simultaneously. The defense grid is cycling down. Zextral announced, voice tense. Primary shields, weapons platforms, early warning systems, all failing in sequence. It's a systematic shutdown, Okafor observed. Has to be internal sabotage. The hardware protocols are being overridden one by one. Rodriguez was already moving toward the communication array. I've seen this pattern before, during the Jakarta cyberattacks on Earth. It's not overriding protocols. It's creating signal interference that triggers automatic safety shutdowns. She turned to Reyes. Captain, I need access to the station's communication core. You? Scoffed one of the council members. Your species hasn't even mastered basic quantum entanglement. Exactly, Rodriguez replied. We still remember how to operate analog systems. Sometimes the oldest technology is the hardest to corrupt. She pointed to the failing defense grid display. You have approximately 18 minutes before this station is completely defenseless. I suggest you stop arguing and let me try. The android infiltrator lay deactivated on Dr. Khan's examination table, its synthetic skin peeled back to reveal circuitry that pulsed with fading bioluminescence. What had seemed perfectly human, down to artificially created pores and simulated respiration, now appeared as an unsettling hybrid of organic tissue and quantum machinery. The integration is flawless, Khan murmured, adjusting her microscanner. Whoever designed this understood human biology better than most human doctors. Captain Rice studied the android's face, the features of a junior communications officer who had supposedly transferred to the outpost 3 months ago. How many more are there? Impossible to determine without testing everyone, Admiral Zextral admitted. The military leader hovered at the edge of the laboratory. All 4 arms crossed defensively. This technology exceeds anything we've encountered from the Krellans before. Dr. Chen pointed to a pulsing node at the base of the android's skull. This is the quantum entanglement module I detected. It's transmitting continuous biometric data from everyone it encounters, creating a database for creating more infiltrators. But how did you identify it when our sensors missed it entirely? The Admiral demanded. Reyes exchanged glances with Khan, who nodded and activated a holographic display. Humans evolved as social predators, Khan explained, highlighting microscopic images of human eyes. Our survival depended on detecting deception. We developed unconscious recognition of micro-expressions, tiny facial movements lasting less than 1/5 of a second. The display showed side-by-side comparisons, a human reacting to a sudden noise versus the android's response to the same stimulus. The infiltration unit's responses are perfect by objective measurement standards, Khan continued, but they lack the inconsistency of genuine emotional responses. Their pupils dilate uniformly. Their micro-expressions are too precise, too calculated. You're saying you identified advanced quantum technology because it wasn't flawed enough. The Admiral's translucent skin flushed with colors that suggested disbelief. Precisely, Reyes confirmed. Your species communicate primarily through bioluminescence and chemical signatures. You never evolved to detect visual deception the way humans did. An alert chimed as the station's long-range sensors activated. Lieutenant Rodriguez rushed into the laboratory, her uniform disheveled from crawling through maintenance ducts, to restore the communications array. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL at the system's edge, she reported. Krellan signatures, but something's off. The tactical display materialized, showing 17 approaching vessels with unfamiliar configurations. Those aren't standard Krellan warships, Admiral Zextrol observed. They're using stealth technology we've never encountered. Dr. Chen studied the energy readings, then snapped his fingers. It's because they're not trying to hide from your sensors. They're disguised to fool your recognition algorithms. He turned to the Admiral. Your targeting systems are calibrated to identify specific Krellan energy signatures, but these ships have been modified to appear as civilian transports to your automated defense grid. Rodriguez was already typing commands into her console. If we reconfigure the station's medical imaging array to scan for biological markers instead of energy signatures. The display flickered, then resolved to show the approaching fleet in stark relief, their true configurations now visible. Get those targeting solutions to the defense grid, Reyes ordered, and prepare the Intrepid for emergency launch. If they breach the outer defenses, we'll need a mobile platform. As the station's klaxons wailed and personnel rushed to battle stations, Admiral Zextrol approached Reyes. I owe your crew an apology, Captain, the Admiral admitted. It seems your human imperfections may be precisely what this war needs. The Confederation High Command's floating city drifted through the amber clouds of the gas giant Helios 7, harvesting valuable elements as it traversed atmospheric layers. Through the command center's transparent alloy dome, Reyes watched lightning storms flash in the distance, illuminating cloud formations that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Your proposal is madness, declared Commander Vosh, the avian strategist whose feathered crest rippled with agitation, deliberately sacrificing our Sixth Fleet to draw out the Krellan dreadnoughts. The political ramifications alone. Politics won't matter if we lose this war, Reyes countered, manipulating the holographic display to demonstrate the maneuver. The Krellans expect you to protect your most valuable assets at all costs. They've optimized their strategies around this assumption. Admiral Zextrol moved his four hands through the simulation, testing variables. The casualty projections are troubling, but the potential strategic advantage. His voice trailed off as he studied the projections. Dr. Chen cleared his throat, drawing attention to the quantum entanglement display he'd been monitoring. We've intercepted another tactical packet from the Krellan network, he announced, his voice hushed despite their secure surroundings. Their high command is redirecting 3 battle groups to reinforce the Cygnus sector. They're concerned about our recent victories. The information sent a ripple of cautious optimism through the assembled leaders. This infiltration of their communication network remains our greatest advantage, remarked Admiral Zextral. Though I still don't understand how your damaged FTL drive created this entanglement. Chen's expression turned sheepish. Neither do I, completely. Our drive was experimental, utilizing quantum tunneling principles that weren't fully understood. The Krellin weapons interacted with our drive in ways we never anticipated. Reyes redirected the conversation to their immediate challenge. We need to decipher more of their language patterns to fully exploit this advantage. Not just their military codes, but the cultural context behind them. At the far end of the war table, Lieutenant Rodriguez had been working alongside a Confederation linguistics expert, a being whose translucent body contained multiple brains floating in luminescent fluid. We've made a breakthrough, Rodriguez announced. The Krellin tactical language isn't just a code, it's a modified version of an ancient religious text. Their battle strategies are expressed as sacred geometries. She displayed a comparison between Krellin fleet formations and intricate mathematical patterns from their equivalent of scripture. Each maneuver corresponds to a different ritual, the linguist added, voice bubbling through its translation module. They don't just fight, they perform ceremonies of conquest. This revelation landed like a physical blow among the Confederation leaders. This changes everything, whispered Admiral Zextral. If their tactics are bound by religious constraints, then they're predictable. Reyes completed the thought. Every religion has taboos, actions that are forbidden. If we can identify the Krellin military taboos, we can force them into impossible situations. A junior officer interrupted with an urgent communication. The Krellin flagship Emperor's Claw has been located. Long-range scouts confirm it's heading toward the Arcturus mining colony with a substantial escort. All eyes turned to the strategic display as the massive ship's projected course appeared in glowing red. Perfect, Reyes said, her expression hardening. We now have both the target and the cultural context to execute our strategy. She turned to the assembled commanders. Who controls your fastest stealth vessels? It's time to prepare our chess gambit. The Intrepid shuddered as it dropped out of the slipstream, its hybrid drive cooling systems venting luminescent plasma into the void. Captain Reyes steadied herself against her command chair, surveying the tactical situation. Their small strike force had emerged exactly as planned. Behind the mineral-rich asteroid belt that would mask their approach from the Krellin sensors. Phase 1 complete. Lieutenant Commander Jackson reported from Tactical. Confederation cruisers Vigilance and Tempest are in position. The Sundered Hope has suffered drive damage but reports combat readiness. On the main view screen, the massive Krellin planet killer Emperor's Claw hung against the backdrop of stars like an obsidian cathedral, its spine-like protrusions collecting solar energy from the nearby star. Surrounding it were 17 escort vessels arranged in a geometric pattern that Rodriguez had identified as the Spear of Domination formation, a ceremonial configuration used only when the flagship was preparing for a planetary assault. They're charging their main cannon, Dr. Chen observed, studying the energy readings. Targeting solutions indicate they'll be ready to fire on the mining colony in approximately 28 minutes. What the Krellins didn't know was that the mining colony had been evacuated 3 days earlier, its 2,000 inhabitants relocated through a hastily constructed slipstream portal. The facility now housed only automated systems and one critical component, a quantum resonator tuned precisely to the frequency of the Intrepid's modified sensors. Begin transmission to the decoy probes, Reyes ordered. Execute Jackson Gambit. Throughout the asteroid belt, 36 small probes activated simultaneously, each broadcasting false tactical data designed to mimic a Confederation battle group preparing an all-out assault. The reaction was immediate and exactly as predicted. The outer ring of Krellin escort ships broke their ceremonial formation to investigate, violating the sacred geometry of their battle plan. Channel open to Admiral Zextral, Rodriguez announced. The Admiral's translucent features appeared on the screen. The Krellins have taken the bait, Captain. The resolute, Guardian, and Defiance will proceed with Phase 2. As planned, the 3 Confederation cruisers emerged from hiding on the far side of the system, weapons blazing as they targeted specifically selected Krellan vessels, not the most vulnerable ones, but those whose destruction would create maximum disruption to the remaining ceremonial formation. Emperor's Claw is responding, Jackson reported with grim satisfaction. They're redirecting power from their main cannon to defensive systems. They're confused. Indeed, the Krellan fleet's movements had become erratic. According to Dr. Chen's analysis of their quantum communications, their tactical network was overloaded with contradictory information. Their rigid adherence to battlefield ceremony was collapsing under the strain of human unpredictability. Now, Mr. Jackson, Rise commanded. The sacrifice play. The tactical officer activated their secret weapon, the modified probes containing the consciousness of the liberated Krellan AI they had discovered in the captured technology. These devices attached themselves to the hulls of 5 key Krellan vessels, bypassing external defenses through microscopic breaches. Once connected, they began broadcasting false tactical data directly into the hive mind network. On the view screen, Krellan ships started firing on each other, their targeting systems compromised by contradictory commands. Emperor's Claw is going dark, Rodriguez reported with barely contained excitement. They're disconnecting from the network to prevent contamination. Exactly as planned. The flagship, now isolated from its fleet mind, was vulnerable. All ships, converge on primary target. Rise ordered. Tractor beams ready. We're taking that ship intact. The corridors of the captured Krellan flagship Emperor's Claw resembled the interior of some vast, predatory creature. Bioluminescent conduits pulsed with energy that flowed like blood through veins, and the walls themselves seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting subtly, as if testing their new occupants. Captain Rice led the joint Human Confederation team deeper into the vessel, past signs of the brief but fierce struggle that had secured their victory. The ship actively resists our presence, observed Turnell, whose iridescent skin had taken on a muted amber hue. The Krellans bond with their vessels on a genetic level. This ship is mourning. Dr. Khan's scanner beeped insistently as they approached a massive sealed doorway. Massive life sign readings ahead. Hundreds, no, thousands of distinct signatures, but they're unusual. When they finally breached the central chamber, the sight that greeted them was beyond anything they had imagined. Spanning multiple decks was a vast organic computer system, pulsing with dark energy. And connected to it, suspended in transparent nutrient tanks, were thousands of beings from dozens of species. Gods of the Void, whispered Admiral Zextrol, his translucent skin paling. These are the missing scientists from the conquered worlds. Most appeared unconscious, their bodies modified with neural interfaces that connected directly to the ship's systems. Tubes and conduits extracted fluids from their bodies, while others pumped in chemicals that kept them in a perpetual dream state. They're not just prisoners, Dr. Chen realized, studying the data architecture. They're components. The Krellans are using their neural pathways as living processors, harvesting their creativity and intelligence to design weapons. Lieutenant Rodriguez discovered the control terminal and began accessing the ship's records. According to this, they call it the thought engine. Each captive generates specialized algorithms based on their species' unique cognitive patterns. This explains the Krellans' technological leaps, Rice said grimly. They're not innovating. They're stealing the intellectual capabilities of entire civilizations. A sudden commotion erupted from an adjacent chamber. There, the boarding team had discovered something even more disturbing, a laboratory where Krellan scientists performed surgical procedures on their captives. But the scientists themselves appeared unusual, their movements mechanical, their eyes vacant. The Krellan workers aren't acting of their own volition, Dr. Khan observed, scanning one of the captured technicians. These implants, they're receiving direct neural commands from elsewhere. The captured Krellan suddenly lurched forward, its eyes focusing on Captain Rice with unexpected clarity. Liberate us. It rasped in broken universal standard, the translation implant struggling with concepts it wasn't designed to express. We are not conquerors by choice. Before anyone could respond, the Krellin convulsed violently, green fluid leaking from its eyes and mouth as its control implant self-destructed, killing the host. Something doesn't want them talking to us, Jackson observed grimly. Deeper in the lab, they discovered records detailing the true power structure of the Krellin Imperium. Holographic displays showed ancient Krellins, different from the soldiers they had encountered, whose massively enlarged craniums and withered bodies suggested extensive genetic modification. The overseers, Turnall breathed. We thought they were myths, propaganda from conquered worlds. Rodriguez had managed to access the ship's secure communications. Captain, you need to see this. The overseers have activated something called Contingency Terminus across all Krellin forces. It's a self-destruct protocol. They're killing their own army rather than risk losing control. The approach to the Overseer Command Planet resembled a descent into mythological underworld. The combined fleet, human, Confederation, and liberated Krellin vessels, navigated a nebula of crimson gases and ionized particles that obscured conventional sensors. Ahead loomed Craxus Prime, a world reshaped by technology until its natural features had been entirely erased, its surface a geometric puzzle of artificial structures. On the bridge of the Intrepid, now reinforced with salvaged Krellin technology, Captain Rice studied the final reports from each division. Dr. Khan's counter-signal has been distributed to all ships, Rodriguez confirmed. The moment we're in range, we broadcast on all frequencies. If it works, the self-destruct implants should deactivate. If it works, murmured Admiral Zex Troll, who had chosen to join the Intrepid for this final assault. The Overseers have had millennia to perfect their control systems. Through the view screen, they watched as the first wave of Krellin defenses activated. Orbital platforms that generated overlapping disruptor fields designed to tear apart any approaching vessel. But they had anticipated this. The freed Krellin consciousness that had aided them against the Emperor's claw had provided the shutdown codes, transmitted now from the captured flagship. One by one, the platforms went dark. They know we're coming, Rice said quietly. They've never been challenged like this before. The intelligence gathered from the liberated scientists had revealed the shocking truth about the Overseers. A mere 17 individuals who had ruled the Krellin Imperium for over 8 centuries, extending their lives by harvesting neural tissue from conquered species. Their control center was buried deep beneath the surface of Craxus Prime, protected by layers of defenses and legions of mind-controlled soldiers. We're receiving a transmission, Rodriguez announced, surprise evident in her voice. It's directly from the Overseer Citadel. The screen flickered, revealing an ancient Krellin whose enormous cranium and atrophied body spoke of extreme genetic modification. When it spoke, its voice resonated with harmonics that triggered an instinctive unease. Primitives, it addressed them. You have accomplished what no others have dared. Impressive, yet ultimately meaningless. Even now, my consciousness transfers to new vessels grown from my original genetic material. The Imperium is eternal. Ray stepped forward. We've disabled your self-destruct protocols. Your armies are about to learn the truth. The Overseer's lipless mouth curved in something resembling amusement. You believe freedom is what they desire. The warrior caste knows nothing but battle. The worker caste nothing but service. You would condemn them to purposelessness. Is that your idea of mercy? Before Rice could respond, proximity alarms blared. The main Krellin battle fleet had arrived, hundreds of vessels surrounding their position. We're trapped, Admiral Zextrol stated, his translucent skin darkening with dread. But Dr. Chen, monitoring the quantum communications network, suddenly straightened. Captain, something's happening. The Krellin ships, they're receiving our counter-signal. The neural suppressors are failing across their fleet. On the tactical display, they watched as Krellin vessel after vessel broke formation. Communication channels erupted with confused, then angry, then jubilant transmissions as Krellin crews regained their autonomy for the first time in generations. The Overseer's image flickered as it received reports of the unfolding rebellion. For the first time, its ancient features registered an unfamiliar emotion. Fear. "What have you done?" it whispered. Rice met its gaze unflinchingly. "We introduced them to a concept your kind forgot long ago. Choice."